Hello and welcome to Reflective Dialectic. For those of you on cyberspace, my name is Philip and I present these sessions on Reflective Dialectic, both a practical and a theoretical. Today is going to be a theoretical session and I've changed it slightly. Remember I said I was going to do the thinking strategy. Now I'm still going to do that, but it's now only a very small part of an overview which I'm going to give from what we've done and where we are going. So you're going to see a lot of drawings on the board. Now let's review what we've done. The paradigm dialectic, I've drawn that in many different ways already. There's another one, and then thereafter there's another one. What we can say here is that it's the antithesis. I'm just writing it like that. It's one word actually, and the thesis. I want to emphasize that. And then supposedly there's a synthesis by working the thesis and antithesis together. That was the idea behind everything. And remember we spoke about just the ancient narratives, religion. I'm just going to call it pre-modern for now. Pre-mod. So that's the ancient narratives. And then we had interpretation. Oops. Let me rewrite that a little. Start closer. Right, and what was interpretation? It was looking at the narratives that was and what it is, and discussing it, saying what it was all about. Then came along in around about 1850s, it really started, but it started earlier actually. It got prominent in the 1850s, and that was the radical let's call it radical interpretation. Now, what this was, we can also call it the social constructionist. And those were constructivist. There's an S and I there. The radicals spoke about these people. They seldom spoke about those people. But what they actually did was to project on modernism. And we said it was about 1843 when Mills wrote that book. to about 18, say 80 for example. 1880 is when this postmodernist, and I didn't write it here, did I? This is all the post-mod. Right. This projection, famous, was Marx. It's an X. And there was another projection from here onto this, but also through here, up to here, was Weber, Max Weber. Yeah, okay. So, and remember, this thesis was in a projection on those dates. And because this was a projection, synthesis couldn't happen, because a thesis which is only a projection doesn't help very much. Okay, that's what we had. Now we're going to take that projection away, and this 1843, 1850 story as well. And this is what we did last time, was the origin of information, or origin of knowledge, way of looking at it. And remember, I've drawn a little earthquake, a little earth with something around it, and this is where you're born and you grow up, and this is when you're an adult, and that is your thinking, and then you have to pass through this to get to that area. And the other thing we did was also, you were born here, you developed your culture, and it was all about thinking, if you can remember what we've done there. So, we're going to do it slightly different today, so that it is more easy on the eye. Okay, we're going to have, on the thesis side, we're going to have developmental. On the antithesis side, we're going to have mentally developed. What does it mean? Anyone? All in the mind. Correct. Reality, all in the mind. Developmental means what? It's bound by laws of nature. If I may call it that for now, I don't like the word, but anything that happens here, gravity will affect it, density will affect it, flammability will affect it. And what have we got here? No constraints. If something comes through imagination, gravity has no effect on it, distance has no effect on it, time has no effect on it, flammability has no effect on it. It's all in the mind. It's free. Right, and then we said, this is, in other words, it's ecological. And we had two ways of looking at this, and it was primordial evolution. Primordial organisms, or let's just call it evolution. And then we had Homo sapiens. And today is my day for dashes, I see. Right. So, what am I talking about here? When I say something is developmental, I actually mean it's evolution. It's bound by the laws of nature. It's part of Gaia, if it's on Earth and it's life we're talking about. And it's how life developed on Earth. And remember, I told you before, go and have a look on YouTube and type in "trees can talk" and open a vast new area for your information about how trees are actually pretty intelligent. Now, and you can go and look at bees and ants as well, but we already know they are very intelligent. And then came along Homo sapiens, many moons ago, and we developed. Our brain sizes increased, and as our brain sizes increased, our ability to emotion, express emotion, also increased. It's much greater than our closest relative, the chimpanzee. Our facial expressions, the number of emotions or combinations of emotions, all those. And that's how Homo sapien developed until now. After our emotions started to become more complex, our cognitive abilities started to increase, our ways of thinking. And then the in-between areas, let's have emotion, cognition, and then they synthesized and we have imagination. And spiritual experiences. So, emotions became more complex, cognition became more complex. We developed pictures in our head, a new reality, a mental reality, and from that, spiritual experience became possible. Because you have to have emotions for a spiritual experience, and you have to kind of be able to interpret it, or something like that. So that's the thesis. Now let's go to the antithesis. And what do we have? Remember, this is now all in the mind, and this is what's now these is called postmodernism, and what's called modernism. But it's not a projection of modernism. It's over here is our current technological advanced society. Right, mentally developed. And we have two. I call this also psychosocial transformation performance. Psychosocial transformation and again I'm out of it, and performance. Psychosocial transformation performance. So something in our minds and in our society as a species changed, and there were some performance parameters. So the first one I've got here is supernatural experiences. And the second one is hypersocial arguments. So, what have I got here? I've got spirituality here, religion, and remember, it can be supernatural because no constraints. All things can happen. People can be raised from the dead. So, hypersocial arguments is what we call postmodernism. This is what we call pre-modernism. And postmodernism then is all the things we think about, even our economic systems, our political systems, are all over here. And because this is real, and this is real, two different kinds of real, a synthesis is possible. You just need to accept this. And what we'll find as we go through diversity and identity discussions, that people who struggles to negotiate within that space of identity politics, somewhere here they don't accept something of us, or they don't accept something over here or over there, but mostly over here. So that's the story. And again, we've got the dialectic. Remember the reflective dialectic. We reflect on each other to get a synthesis. Now, is there another way to do it? And there is, actually. And this is all still reviewing what we've already done. Sorry, takes some time. But you haven't seen this one before, which I'm going to draw now. And this is it. Now, you can put modernism in here and postmodernism there in all its different variations, pre and meta. Remember, meta is postmodernism, the critical and interpretive. And here's a lens, and they reflect on each other through that lens. That's the other way to put it. But there are two very, very different things, because here's actually a bifurcation point. And the bifurcation point is where things change completely. Right. We can also change this and say, okay, this is our developmental reality. All possibilities from birth is here, or conception. All possibilities are possible. And this is natural development then. Remember, we've got nature, nurture, and we get there to pedagogy, and then we've got tutorial, and we've even got novice. New things happening to you while you're an adult. And these two comes to andragogy. So you've got pedagogy, andragogy, you've got your whole culture here as you developed, and then you've got all the pre-mind or mental stuff up there. The supernatural, if I could change this from monism and things like that to supernatural and hypersocial. So we can also do it like that, and it's called the light wave, what we use in physics. So that's what we've done up to now. Remember, it's hard to get it all first time around. It takes time. It takes time. Right, now, what I want to do is I want to give more information on the background of diversity and identity politics. And the first thing I want to do is a complex dynamic process. I'm kind of moving away from a dialectic at the moment, and I'm using something someone developed. Can't remember who it was. No. Something about the five, I can't remember. But what we have is we have two loops. A reinforcing loop and an adaptive loop. This is the input side, and this is the output side. Dear me. Okay. So on this side we can enter demographics. Who you are. In this sense, my demographic is pale, male, well, old and stale. So, there's a P short. And on this side, we're going to enter energy, radiation, what else? Interdisciplinary information. Interdisciplinary information. So, no silos. It's interdisciplinary. And when we discuss things, it's elaboration, deliberation, and classification. So, what's the output we expect after this bioethicate? We expect agency. And with a bit of luck, something like respect. Or at least rapport. Where can I put that? Rapport. Rapport, as they say. Now, I enter my demographics in here, and it goes all around, and it becomes reinforcing. It starts with everything, and everything becomes the demographic. My whole viewpoint, my whole perspective is in here. However, if I then add this loop, where I put in more information, I elaborate, I deliberate, I classify, then this information becomes not diluted, but integrated and synthesized with this, and we get some rapport, agency, or respect as output. So this is a process that drives what we're going to do. Absolutely. So just take it in for a moment. Got it. That's a complex dynamic process. Very basic. May not look like it, but it's very basic. Right. The next thing. What will that be? Aha. We're going to talk about cultures. What is culture? When you've got these discussions on diversity politics or identity politics, if I mention the word culture and nobody knows what it means, or they think they do. What do you know about culture? Think about it, every one of you. Just what's the concept in your mind? Now let's change that concept. I'm sure I'm going to change it. Let's start with bioethnic. I was conceived, I got born, and in my case, my social, national, identity, racial identity, is Occidental culture. Culture. Yes, that's what you're saying to me, but we all knew that. That's exactly the picture in our head. So I changed. Well, not changed. In our discussions, we often speak about, as in this case we are now, we are in an organization, a business. We're running a business. Is that business because it's in America, is it Occidental culture? No. If it's in South Africa, is it necessarily African culture? Or in Egypt, Arab culture? Not necessarily. Or in Japan, less so, it's very much Japanese culture, but there's influences from Occidental culture, because when they make products, we normally make it, or we often make it to sell to Occidental culture. So what we have is we've got an organizational management culture in business. Each business has got a culture which is about leadership. It's about order, law and order. Very important. Leadership is important. It's about economics, and it's actually a synthetic culture. With an economic base, or a collaborative base, or a cooperative base. But if this is a bioethnic culture, this then is a synthetic culture. It's man-made. It's man-made. Right. Did that change your minds already? Because it's different to that. You can't equate that with that. So when you talk about identity politics, you must state if you're here or wherever you're here. You can't just go from one to the other willy-willy. But then there's also a more industrious culture, trading industry. Now, also synthetic. We trade with different countries, and international trade, let's put it that way, international trade. We've moved away from one organization, even if it's an international organization, but here we're talking about a specific organization. I don't want to mention names. Here we're talking about industry in general. When did industry start? Now, that's an interesting question. You will hear people say that we are in the fourth industrial revolution. What are we talking about? We're talking about steam, electricity, computers, and today some digital, went from micro to nano technology. So it's what happened in Europe. So the whole industrial revolution is based on Western standards. When I talk about the fourth industrial revolution, we're talking about Western standards. Fire. Without fire, it couldn't be the industrial revolution. So fire was a very early industrial revolution, and that happened in Africa. Even before we moved out as Homo sapiens to conquer the world, or as Homo erectus to conquer the world. So, yeah, you can talk about the fourth industrial culture. If you've got a very short memory and you're very pro-Western culture, you didn't decolonize industrial culture. So, but there's another one which you have to consider. And it's also synthetic. Mass media, social media. I see a movie made in America and I really go out and buy a hamburger, American made, or America promoted, not really conceived, but promoted. Or I look at Bollywood and all of a sudden I want to eat Eastern food, for instance. So we can't move from the one to the other. And this one, this one, this one, they all influence that one. And at 21, you had less of his influences, or make it age 12. You have less influences than 21. And at 45, you have more. And by the old age, this almost doesn't exist anymore. It only exists in principle. Because you're now part of all of this, and all of this is part of you. Mostly. So there are people who live in small places without social media and mass media, and they just remain there for much of their lives, agriculture, doing agriculture, things like that. So, please look at this carefully, and please keep it in mind when you speak about culture. Let's move on. It's getting late. And I'm not halfway even. Okay. I heard that. I'll be faster. Try. Oh dear. Adaptive functional entanglement. What am I talking about? That's my glasses, so I can't see. Adaptive functional entanglement, let's call it that. I can also call it agency. I can also call it mental ability or development. There's ways of looking at it, but that's what I'm calling it for now. And I've referred to this before a couple of times. My original concept again looked like this. Conceived, born, and nature and nurture, or pedagogy. My development from child to adulthood, and then I'm becoming an adult. And I function in this andragogic world. And this then, and you've heard this word, me use this word before, this area here is the proximate perspective horizon. This is where, let me put it like that, 80% of us operate 80% of the time with 80% of information. We're almost always in this area inside the proximate perspective horizon. And that's our world. That's how we think. That's how we do things. So, what do we need to get more insight? We have to break through this. And for this, we need what we had on this, that other one. We had the transdisciplinary information, elaboration, deliberation, classification, all that we need to break through this barrier. But we also need energy or a will to do it and to see things differently. So evolution, a perspective on evolution is still possible within this area, but to really break out and see the bigger picture of evolution, you need to break through this proximate barrier. If you want to really discuss diversity and identity politics, you have to break through here. But all diversity and identity politics is in this area. Another way to get through this barrier is what we call to reflect on things, or as we call it, pedagogy. And by bringing in this transdisciplinary information and the energy, you can go to metagogy. It's a world of insight. It's a world of seeing life differently, of seeing the world differently. It makes it much easier to discuss 80% of people, 80% of time, and 80% of information. So, I can even make this higher, but let's stick to 80%. You will find yourself there. But you don't want it to be 100% of people, no, not people, but 100% of the time, 100% of the information. You don't want to be there. You want to be in this space, 80% of the time, 80% of our information. You want to be in this metagogic space where you see the world differently. It's actually like onions. And you break through the onions and you see it very differently. You can move from, for example, a creationist right here in the middle to evolutionist out there by information and by what you accept and what you are ready to deal with. A creationist cannot fully appreciate diversity discussions. They've got very limited ability to deal with it, while a person in metagogic space can deal with it very, very easily. Right, there's another way to draw this. Same thing. I'm just going to my light cones again. I like my light cones. If I use this concept, again, birth and conception, everything is possible. As I move up here, I'm growing, but again, this is a pedagogic nature and nurture. Nature and nurture, novice and tutorial, and there's growth here. But what's happening? We are converging to very simple ideas of the world, and it's becoming more and more smaller and smaller, simpler and simpler, and very stable. It becomes very, very stable. You put it there. Or periodic. If we talk about, it can be periodic as well. And here's a bifurcation. It takes a lot of energy and a lot of information to move through this area. And this is in the primordial perspective horizon. Remember what we had earlier? And you have to move through here. And now everything is diverging perspectives. Doesn't mean everything is relative. No, it doesn't mean that. And again, everything here means that the laws of nature applies. It always applies. Right. But it must be, let me just write this down. Physical constraint, information rich, and this is an important one. Critical connectivity with information. Critical connectivity with information. And it doesn't help you to have a lot of information only. If you don't have this critical connectivity, all that information helps you absolutely nothing. You just ignore it. You become ignorant to it. So this plus this plus that is needed to bifurcate through that area and have diversity perspectives, of diverse perspectives. Not diversity perspectives, you can have diversity perspectives, yeah, you really do. But this is diverging diversity perspectives. Right. Done. No, not everything. That one. This is the easy one. Who are you? Who are you? Who are you in the world as a person in the diversity discussions? Clean this up. This is an easy one. And I'm going to ask you, what is wellness? Because this is the wellness that's I know it's not true, but we can say that diversity discussions is about wellness. I don't want to be discriminated against. I want the best possible for me. I want fairness. So, what do we have here? Let me see if I can get this right. Identity. I'm just going to write ID. My social demographic. Let's use me as an example. White, European, grey, actually for a few hairs on my head, I'm grey. What else? Already got that. Alright. But as I live, I've got emotional experiences and development. Sometimes only the experiences. What I can call eco-trauma. And I've got cognitive development and experiences. Which forms my behavior on the cognitive side. There's also a behavioral influence from this side. And this is a whole wellness disc for me. But it's not only that, because here's the environment, context. The environment in which I live. And there's influence from there. This is pretty stable, can't really be changed. So the only change must be some synthesis between those two. I want you to look at that very carefully, because we talk about eco-trauma, we talk about trauma, we talk about discrimination, but where do we put it? So we must look at this. And this discrimination, the eco-trauma, sometimes has something to do with that. And we need to force a connection over here in order to have wellness for ourselves. For our society, we need to go out and mobilize and sometimes be radical. And that's the whole story on that. Right. But it's not the end yet. Now I'm going to give an even more difficult one. Very important for organizations. If you want to manage diversity, almost there. Now, let's see if I can draw this one correctly. It's not the best I can do, is it? but let's call it that. What I'm trying to draw here is a hexagon, and it's a human diversity system. Which you can use in an organization, and it's a hexagon. I'm not going to write it down. A hexagon locked, interlocked hexagon presentation. That's what it is. So you can use this within an organization to manage identity politics and diversity ideas. And let's start with a social demographic. Social demographic. And it's a kind of intersectional power. That's bothering me. Close. When we've got personal demographic, what's that? We know what this is, but what's a personal demographic? My ID card, my social security card, that's part of it. It is my status within society can be part of it. Whether I'm married or not can be part of it. And my private thoughts are part of it. And it's a personal or a private, I want to call it a personal power, agency power, agency. So, let's say it's my family system. You need to bring family into here as well. Right, and I get born, and then I need to develop demographic. And what's that? It's my education, my culture, my education. Wherever I got my education, does that look like education to you? Closer. So, I call this information power. But remember, information is not everything. It's your critical thinking about information, how you involve yourself with information. But I'm also a person, and I've got a psychological demographic. What's the difference between a psychological demographic and a personal demographic? We can see that they link there. So this is my mental health, my wellness, mental wellness. My ability to constrain emotion with cognition. constrain emotion with cognition. What happens then? I limit my, not my ability, but accidental delusions in my life. Right. And this is what I just call mind power then. But remember, it's to move away from delusion, to move away from it, to reality. Let's call it reality, towards reality. Who spoke about this a lot? Plato. He said we must get out of a cave. And now you must help me with a rabbit hole. Who was a woman with a rabbit hole? A woman with a rabbit hole? I can't hear you. Alice in Wonderland. Alice in Wonderland. She said to move to reality, from reality into the hole, and there she seen all kinds of funny things. So, but I'm not finished yet. If I add this, I add this, I add this, and I make a connection here, where do I go? I go to Feng Shui. Demographic. How able I am to do things. And I will cause visibility or relationship actually. Power. Because you can't be functional if you can't have good relations. You need good relations. You need respect for people. You need fairness. All captured over here. And then this is the one you hear about so often, institutional. Cluster. Now, these are all clusters. What does institutional do? Well, this is the economic power. Economic status, things like that. Even being the president. Whoever is going to be the president in America, we don't know yet. Now, what we hear when we speak of diversity, this is what we hear about. Only that. You actually never hear about this one. You almost don't hear about this one. This one is mixed in with something else, I'm not sure. And this one you sometimes hear about, and it's then called information. When you hear about it, they call it information. And then all they do is they contrast that one with that one. And they say that's the whole thing. Well, it's not. But there's more. Sorry about that. There's more. Because all this is within a context. Now, this is also safety power. But what I want to do now is what I want to say is how much energy is in the system. If you've got too little energy in the system, it will just go static. or maybe it will start to oscillate in some form, periodic. What you need is to put it to some critical space where it can change completely. Again, I'm going to use the word bifurcation. Now, the energy in the system can also be called innovation. Innovation is a way to measure energy in that system. Now, the next one is the environment. And how sustainable is it? We hear a lot about this today, all these days. The environment and the sustainability of the environment, and we see all the different weather conditions. Please don't put earthquakes in there. It's not the same thing. Climate is something different. And then, all in all together, where did I put respect? Respect and fairness, there, relationships. We need an ethical system. I already hear someone asking, who's ethics? Yes, I know. That's a problem. Well, I've got here responsibility, accountability, dependability, fairness, and honesty. That's what I've got there. So, I want you to look at this very carefully. It looks very complicated. It's not. You can work with these two together and these two together. These two are we not? That's the normal ones we see. Sometimes they have this one. So we need to find a relationship, and when we manage diversity within an organization, you have to use a system like this so that you know where you are. You can't only look at skin color or gender or sexuality. You must know there's a person somewhere there with a very private life. Although with social media these days, I'm not sure where private life is. They even take pictures of their food when they eat. Now, and put it online. Why? How do we develop people? Cognitively and emotionally. How do we make sure that it is here a racism event, that this person can be treated and become psychological, more healthy? We need to do that. So, and it's of no use to be educated and you can't build relationships. Absolutely not. No use at all. And then here's institutions. And remember, when you see institutions in diversity talk, we're not talking about what you see today, we're talking about 1850, the coal mines, the steam factories. That's what we're talking about. Hard labor, sweat. So, I don't know about a digital space, a cyberspace, when we talk. So keep that in mind. Even in psychology, we've still got industrial and organizational psychology, not cyber and organizational psychology, which it should be by today. One more thing, if you'll allow me, and I'm going to do it very fast. I hope you've taken some time to look at this very, very carefully, because it's very, 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 very important. And use it within your organizations. If you're already there, if you're still not in an organization when you get there. Yeah, working from home will change things, or did change things. I know. But still, there are people back in the office. Okay, the last one. I'm going to skip at least one. But it's also the institutional one. It's an institutional one I'm skipping as well. Diversity dynamic. And it's a management process again. And it works like this. I've called it the yin because in Chinese culture, the leader said, if you've got 9 patches of land, the one in the middle, that comes to me. Everything you gain from this piece of land comes to the king. Or what do they call them? I didn't call them kings, I call them something else. No one to help me there. Okay, that's okay. Right, again, we've got the social dynamic. Social demographic, sorry. We've got the personal. Demographic. We've got the cycle. Demographic. We've got developmental. Same thing again. We've got functional. See, it's a hexagon in a different form. We've got institutional. Remember, that's what you've seen. And that one works for that one goes to that one, this one goes to this one, that one, this one, up there. So this is your hexagon. And developmental has got these extra arrows because you're developing all the time there. That's the machine. Now, this is a macro system. Remember we had the industrial culture? And that gives inputs into the system there. And here's where we have strategies, like political strategies, policies, and interactions, but this is very much international relations, and it enters somewhere into the system. So what happens from somewhere? We've got human. Remember, we're talking about diversity, so it's diversity behavior. So you need strategies. If a political party says abortions shouldn't happen, that's a strategy and everything must change. Or homosexuals will be locked up. It's a strategy, political strategy, and everything must change. Even the institutions must change. And that comes from the existing macro system. In the West, we've got a democratic system. And in many Eastern countries, we've got a socialist system of some sort. So that's a macro system. And even that changes everything. And once everything is changed and all this inputs, human diversity behavior comes in here. If I say homosexuals will be prosecuted, you're going to hide it. If it's a democratic open space, you're going to shout about it. So what we need at the end is rapport. Again, the word rapport. Again, the word respect. So, a diverse environment, a relationship building. And I want you to look at this very carefully, and this is another thing you can introduce to your organizations. And that's it. And that's going to be it for today. Thank you very much for your time and your concentration. I know it was a long day. And we'll see each other at the next practical session. Thank you.